Steve, welcome to the Family Business Show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So you have a phenomenal family business, Walker Construction, and I just thought it'd be just so interesting for the rest of our audience who are other leaders of family businesses to sort of hear a bit more about what you do, how you've got to where you are today, and how you are navigating and steering your ship through this strange time that we live in at the moment. So why don't you kick us off and tell everyone what exactly it is that your family business does and, you know, the history behind it.
Well, as you said, we're a construction business based in Ashford in Kent. We're 56 years in the standing, with a turnover of around £50 million. And we employ around 200 directly employed people and probably a similar amount of consultants, self-employed people. We, as I say, we started in 1964 in North London. My father and his two brothers. I'm second generation. My children are in the business as third generation. And we work in most sectors of the construction industry: building, civil engineering, rail. We've got a broad spectrum of what we do, which is good because if one area is quieter than the other, it can pick it up. And part of the success of our business over the years has been that we do a large amount of self-delivery. And a lot of clients like that, we're in control of our own destiny, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, touch wood, we've survived this long. Obviously, the pandemic has thrown a few challenges at us, like it has everybody else. But we're proud of our heritage. We're proud of what we do. And whilst our business is a family business, the real family is the Walker Construction family, which is the employees. Because without them, we are nothing.
Absolutely. And, it's a very large family, 200 odd people. So there'll be lots of people watching this who are following in the footsteps of their father, their mother, their grandparents. So can you tell me a bit more about your journey into the family business and how that came about?
Yeah. When I was at school, I had no intentions of joining the family business. I actually was accepted for an apprenticeship with BMW Motorsport. I've always been a mechanical person, but my family persuaded me to turn that down, and I joined the business in our tool art company, and worked there for a few years, then got involved in our larger plant company and subsequently into the main contracting business. And, I thank my family for persuading me to change my mind because I've never regretted it. I absolutely love what I do. And I love what I do because of the people. We all have bad days at work. There's always things I don't do, but the colleagues and friends that I've got in the business in over 40 years being involved, some of them are now lifelong friends. And I think this is the thing with the pandemic. Everybody disappeared and went away, and people were working from home, and you didn't see the people. And it's just something that I've always said. Irrelevant of the fact that I'm Steve Walker and it's my business, if I get up in the morning and I start thinking, I don't want to go to work, that's the day when I'll do something else. And I'm thankful to say that I've never had that in my life. I've always loved what I've done. I'm thankful to my own family for convincing me to go down this route. But I had no intentions at all. In fact, I was quite adamant I wasn't going to work for the family business. But there you go.
Here you are. So tell me about your leadership journey over those years, because nobody goes into the family business with all of those skills already, do they? So you have to sort of learn on the job, as it were. How have you found leading a team which is now, over 200 people?
Yeah, no, well, obviously, like you say, I started at the bottom. I actually started being a mechanic in our tool art place, mending machinery. But when I came to the plant art company at 28 years of age, I came in as managing director. And along with my colleague Paul King, he came in as financial director. He's a couple of years younger than me, so he was 26, I was 28. And we found the way to do it at that age was to talk to the older staff and learn from them, and give them respect to get respect. It's difficult when you're young and you're the boss's son, perceived, to come in and do that. But listen and learn. listen to people who are cleverer than you at a particular task, and learn from them and make them feel inclusive and included. And, you know, all the way through, right up to now to being chairman of the business, it's about making time for people and listening to what they've got to say, letting them have their input. You cannot beat communication. You've got to talk to people. You've got to listen to their stories, you know, and know about them personally. You know, they're not numbers. You know, they are people that have lives outside work. Their lives depend on us providing them with an income. You know, so it's always interesting to hear and know about their family circumstances. You know, they've got children. You know, they might have somebody at home who's poorly or something. And it's just taking that little bit of time to interact with them and give them the respect that they deserve. And, you know, if you've got happy staff, they do a good job for you.
And isn't that something, you know, so unique to family businesses? You literally treat them like family compared to a big corporate.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, like I said earlier, you know, there's not so many of the Walker family in the business anymore. I mean, I'm the only Walker that's a director of the business at the moment, albeit my children are involved, but they're still quite young. But, you know, it is the Walker Construction family, you know, and we employ some wonderful people. We employ some very clever people, people who are good at their jobs, people who want to work for the business. And it's keeping that enthusiasm and keeping them involved. And the answer to that, for the sake of repeating myself, is communication. You know, you've got to let them know what's going on. You know, I think in life we're very good at criticising people when they do something wrong. We're generally not as good at praising them when they do something well. I think that's a thing that English people like to do, or British people like to do. You know, it's very important to say thank you, to say, you know, good job this week, guys. And those little things go a long way, and they mean a lot to people, you know. And when you get feedback from people and they say, you know, we're really pleased that you took the time to do that, it makes your job worthwhile. And I always say, if somebody leaves us because they're bettering themselves and it's something that we can't offer them, good luck to them. But if they leave because they're unhappy, I feel we failed. I feel I failed personally.
Absolutely, and I've met lots of people from Walker Construction, and they're huge champions and ambassadors of the brand. And you can't buy that, can you? That's not something you can buy for some marketing agency. So that's incredible. Okay, so in your time there, you know, you've, like you said, you started right at the bottom, and now you're chairman. There must have been some really, really tough moments, one of which we are all clearly facing at the moment with the coronavirus pandemic. So looking back at your time, how have you pulled yourself and the business through those dark moments? Because when you run your own company, there is no plan B, is there?
No, there is no plan B. Your name is over the door, and it's over the door 24/7. You know, you can't think, I don't like this anymore, so I'm going to go and get a job over there. It doesn't work like that. You've got, as we said earlier, there's so many people around you, and it's not, it's your employees times 4 as a minimum if you take it as an average, you know, wife and 2 children, partner and 2 children, whatever. So, you know, that is a huge responsibility. I think the biggest thing I've found is I have taught myself the ability to switch off away from work. There's no point sitting at home at the weekend or in the evening worrying about it, because you can't do anything about it. Don't get me wrong, I've had many times in my younger life where I've been in the office till midnight and, you know, work Saturdays and Sundays and so forth, and would do so today if the need arose. But, you know, when you're not at work, you've got to teach yourself. It's not easy, that ability to switch off. You know, and I say to people here, when they say, oh, I woke up at 3 o'clock this morning worrying about this, I say, well, what did you do that for? I wasn't. You know, and it's you know, it's not even their money. They're worrying about it more than I am. You know, it is difficult, and everybody is different in that respect. But, you know, like you say, we have had some tough times. The recession in the 80s, you know, where we saw interest rates at 16% overnight. You know, life in the construction industry is, or any business really, is never a line. It's full of ups and downs. And, you know, we've had our peaks and we've had our troughs. I think, you know, tomorrow is always another day. It's always better in the morning. And going back to the communication issue, a problem shared is a problem halved. You know, we've got a board of directors that take that burden on. We've got a senior management team underneath them. You know, and it's again, and you know, a very successful businessman in the greeting cards industry said to one of my uncles many years ago, the success to business is employing people that are cleverer than you. And, you know, and he's right, because you can't be good at all things. You know, we're sort of the glue as the directors that hold all that together to make sure it all functions, and rather as a team rather than one. But yeah, I mean, there's been some tough times, but the pluses have always outweighed the minuses, and long may that continue.
Absolutely, 100%. So let's talk about that then, because you know, this business is now 50 million turnover, 200 staff, and that's phenomenal. And that doesn't happen by magic. So, you know, if there are businesses out there, particularly smaller ones in construction, you know, what would your advice be towards, you know, growth and the strategy of that? Were you chasing new projects all the time? Did you want it to happen organically? Were you more about building sustainable growth? What was your strategy for that?
Well, the honest answer is, until quite recently, there wasn't. We had this philosophy: if a tender comes through the door, let's price it, and if we win the work, we'll do it. And I suppose you can say that whether it was by accident or by being really clever, we won lots of tenders and our turnover grew. But, you know, we did fall into the trap of taking on too much work a few years ago, and that resulted in the worst year of our trading. We realised our mistake, so we then put a strategy in place to look at what work we took on, only the work that was right for us. You know, did we have the resources at that time? Was it the type of work we wanted? What was the payment profile of that client? You know, all of those sorts of things. And, you know, I think hindsight's wonderful. And my advice to any business now is to pick your target market. Go for it. Don't necessarily just have one string to your bow. Have one or two. Don't have loads, but have one or two. Because, you know, if one sector goes a little bit quiet, the other one come up. If you can, have more than one string. You know, don't put too many eggs in one basket, but pick a course and go for it. You know, believe in your convictions, do your research, pick a course, go for it, and do that. Because, you know, we got to this point where we got up to almost £60 million in turnover. We employed 300 people, and some of those people weren't up to the job, basically. So consequently, we did all this work and were considerably worse off than the year before when we did 45 million with 200 people. You know, all this effort, time, pressures on cash flow and all of that. So pick what you want to do and decide what you want out of your business. You know, I mean, I'm not sure with hindsight that if I spoke to the me 25 years ago, I would want a £50 million turnover business with 200 employees. You know, as I said, it did sort of happen organically. You do have to continue to grow to some extent, but you've got to be careful, you know, that you don't overtrade and you don't overcommit, because ultimately you'll run out of money. And as we all know, cash is what drives the business. You know, you've got to keep that cash flowing in. And in our industry, it's very hard on cash because we have to pay so much out before we get paid. You know, it's from when we do the job to when we get any money, it's probably a minimum of 60 days. So it's quite a juggling act all the way through. So pick what you're going to do, go for it, and have the courage of your convictions and employ clever people.
Definitely. And I think, as you know, entrepreneurs, business leaders, it's really tempting sometimes to chase after everything, you know, all these shiny things. But actually, the key here, particularly in these times we live in, is just focus and remembering what you're really, really good at.
Yeah, and I think inherently it's difficult for business leaders to say no. And I'm the worst at it. You know, somebody will phone up and say, can you do so and so and so and so? And I'll say yes. And the amount of time staff have said to me, what did you say yes to that for? Because it just goes against the grain. You think, oh, we do that job, we make money out of it, blah, blah, blah. But if you're spreading your resources too thin, then ultimately, or you've got people who aren't up to the job, you end up losing money. And, you know, you can, a very old employee of mine who's no longer with us once said to me, when we was talking about the plant hire company, we can go bust parking everything in the yard. We don't want to speed it up by putting it out to work too cheap. You know, you've got to pick what you're doing.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is this coronavirus pandemic. And obviously, you know, construction, notoriously difficult industry whenever there is a recession. So tell me about, you know, how the last 6 months have been for you, and if you can remember back when it very first started, your mindset then.
Well, I think everybody else, we didn't know what the hell was going on. Bring back Brexit, that was easy compared to this. I think the first thing that we did was we said we've got to pick a course and stick to it. You know, just going back to the previous conversation, and we said, right, the government are following the scientific advice. That's what we're going to do, and we've done that all the way through, rightly or wrongly. That's what we've done. We was having daily board meetings by Zoom or in person. The directors are getting together first thing every morning so that we could react, because obviously the news was changing so quickly. The big issue straight away was that obviously the government said the construction industry needs to continue, but they didn't tell the supply chain. So getting materials was virtually impossible. So we did get to a point where we had probably only about a third of our sites running because we just could not get materials. We did have some sites where the client said, no, we want you to stop. We had others where they were saying to us, you must not stop. But we took the decision to follow the advice and keep things going. We were fortunate that obviously we have a work bank in front of us. Our work is procured sometimes quite a long time before we actually start it. So actually having work to do wasn't an issue. It was just being able to get the resources, you know, and thankfully we was able to take advantage of the furlough scheme. I mean, I think we got up to 140 at one point on furlough, which was a lifesaver. You know, we managed our cash very, very carefully. You know, we worked hard on getting in what we was owed, and we had to manage going out, to see us through. We haven't yet been eligible for any of the government grants. We haven't had to go down that route in any way, shape or form. You know, the financial institutions that we use to date have supported us well through it. And that was the important thing, you know, keeping the cash coming in to make sure that we could pay the wages, pay the bills, keep everybody happy. And literally it was, how are we going to survive this? Making profit, losses went out the window. The most important thing is we've got to survive and be there to fight another day. I actually think that for the construction industry, the worst is yet to come, because our work is procured so far in advance and that money is agreed so far in advance. There's got to be a stop to public spending. It can't go on forever. We all know that. So consequently, schemes are potentially going to slow down in the next couple of years because there's not going to be the funding. Saying that, we've seen record numbers of tenders coming through the door to choose from, but what we're finding is, even when we are the successful winner of that tender, actually getting it over the line and started, people are still very reticent. So I think we went into survival mode. Touch wood, we've survived. But now we are looking at the strategy to get us through the next year, 18 months, as to how that's going to be, whether that's going to be a reduction in turnover, whether it's going to be more picky and choosy, whether we go back to taking everything that comes through the door. That is under discussion at the moment, but certainly it was a daily survival mode. And, you know, to answer your question, I think the first week of it all happened, I think if we're all honest, we thought, how are we ever going to get through this? Yeah. But I think every business in the land, unless you're a PPE manufacturer, thought that.
Completely. I think everyone was just paralysed for those first few days, weren't they, until we knew more. So, you know, that is a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. I mean, it was terrifying back in those early days before anyone knew what was happening. You know, not only you, your family's reputation, 2 generations of building a family business and all those people you employ. How did you mentally as a leader get through that?
I think you can only do what you can do. You come in the morning and you do your absolute best all day. You know, you listen to the professionals that you employ, you know, our accountants, our solicitors, the legal team. our banks, the directors that we've got that specialise in certain areas of the business. You take all the advice on board, and as directors, you then make a collective decision. And you've got to then go home and try and switch off, whatever your switch off mechanism is, whether it's watching a bit of stupid TV or listening to music, or you've got to do that, and start again the next day. Because the thing is, if you burn yourself out, you're no good to anybody. And it was a case of very much carry on as normal. It was the immediate issue. Once we got over the immediate week and everybody got their heads round exactly what it was like to be, it probably wasn't so bad as the recession in '87. I think what's been difficult about this one is obviously it's so completely unknown.
Yeah.
As we've seen, London's gone into tier 2 lockdown today. It's just, there's no precedence to gauge it against at all. Whereas the recession we had back in the 80s, there was, obviously we saw the boom and the bust and so forth. But I think that, if we treat it as a similar to what a recession is, we have then got something to compare it against. And obviously it's altered the way we work with social distancing and so forth, and extra cleaning and so forth. And we've now got the vast majority of our office staff still working from home, and that's going to continue for some time to come. But I think, for me personally, it was really, let's just carry on as normal, come to work in the morning and just do the best you can. And nobody can ask any more of that. I always say to everybody, what you've got to do is go home at the end of the week and say, have I given value for money for this week? And if they can honestly say that to themselves, then they could have done no more.
Completely. So you talked about some changes, Ed, the way you work. Have there been any real positives that you can look back on and think, do you know what, that was great that came from that pandemic?
100% reaction to staff. The way the staff have stepped up to the changes in the pandemic has been absolutely amazing. We had staff that were on furlough on 2/3. All the senior staff that were left working agreed to work for 2/3 wages. We had people offering to work half wages. We had people offering to work for free. We've had people take on extra duties. We've had people working extra hours and not wanting to claim for it. We've had people on furlough saying, what can we do? As soon as we can come back, we're ready. And, the staff have been absolutely amazing across the board. And, sadly, we did have to lose a few. That was very difficult. But, unfortunately, the minority had to suffer to protect the majority. But, the staff that we've got left, have just been absolutely outstanding. And, I've got to give a shout out to our HR manager, Pamela, because what she's gone through in the last 6 months with this person's on furlough, off furlough, and sadly that person's got to leave us. She's been an absolute star. But yeah, that's been the real positive. And how they've adapted to the situation, how they took on the challenge. It is hard on site working socially distanced. Because if you've got two men working on a manhole, the manhole's only so big. But they've all embraced it. They've all done what they've got to do, and common sense has prevailed. All we've asked is people, look, just use some common sense with what you're doing. We've had to take into account some people who have been really concerned about the virus. They may have other complaints that, so that puts them in that difficult bracket. We've had people that are shielding and so forth, but we put things in place that they can continue to work at home where possible and so forth, and kept them included. And as I say earlier, the communication we've had going out has been on a weekly basis. At some points, it was daily, whether it be by email, whether it be by video or whatever, and keeping them involved. But, it's been a massive plus point, and there's been some real superstars come out of it.
Amazing. And 5 minutes of fame for Pamela there. I mean, for anyone in HR, I think everyone's come to realise that no matter what industry or business is in, it's all about people. And, you hear it time and time again on business books and all sorts of things, your business is your people. But this has just shown the very best and the very worst for some people. And
the other thing is that we've had to take into account people's mental health. You know, as you know, this industry is renowned for having people having mental health problems, and you know, one if not the highest suicide rate industries in the country. And you know, we've always championed mental health. We've got mental health champions and courses and so forth. But you know, when you've got people suddenly working at home 5 days a week and they might live on their own and they're on lockdown or whatever, you know, it's been keeping in contact with those people. And you know, people like Pamela and Charlotte, our business development manager, they've all gone a long way to helping with this, and you know, keeping people in the loop. You know, it's difficult, and you know, as I said earlier, happy people do a good job.
Completely. So let's talk about the future, because we are where we are with this, and like you say, every day is a fight for survival, you know, and we just have to pray that we come through the other side. So let's talk about the future and what you want for your family business.
Well, survival is the first thing. You know, obviously, I'm nearer the end of my career than the beginning, and you know, I want to see it go on in the future to provide for my children and other members of the family, and the wider Walker Construction family. You know, I'm sure it's formal change over the years, and you know, I have no doubt that the youngsters we have coming through in the business, it will be in totally safe hands. As we said earlier, you know, when your name's over the door, you're never quite out of the pictures. My father sadly is no longer with us, but my 2 uncles are, and one's 82 and one's coming up 80, and they still ask a question or two on the odd occasion that they pop in to make sure we're doing things right or make sure they get their pension. You know, so I think it's, you know, we're 56 years in. I said to our managing director, Phil Webb, that when they hold the 75-year party, I want to make sure I'm around to get the invite. So, you know, business as usual, carry on. You know, have the strategy to be here. You know, like most businesses, we've got a 5-year plan, we've got a 10-year plan. You know, and it's to continue to deliver quality products for the foreseeable future to the construction industry.
Fantastic. And you mentioned there that your children, or some of your children, are involved in the family business. So what's the conversation been with them about the future?
Well, fortunately, they're grown up and don't live with me anymore. So, you know, my daughter is head of our procurement for the business, and my son is one of our site managers. They're fortunate, like me, they both love their work. I tend to stand back from their careers for obvious reasons. I let other people in the business steal them. I mean, I don't directly manage either of them. But, you know, they both realise the heritage. They both know that it started with their granddad. And, you know, they are both shareholders in the company. So hopefully they'll pass that ethos on down, you know, to the future. I mean, that, you know, it seems a bit of a cliche, but they're very family orientated, and they understand the ethos that we've got. And, you know, hopefully when I'm long gone, they'll continue that and pass that down to the next generation.
I'm sure we've got a long time until then, Steve.
Well, hopefully.
And what a wonderful legacy you're leaving, not only, you know, for your family, for the Walker Construction family at large, but also for your community. I mean, any family business is really entrenched in their local community. And when you're a business of your size, employing so many people, that's got to be so important, hasn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And it's one of the reasons that we set up the Walker Construction Trust, which raises money to give out to good causes locally, staff that are in need or so forth. And to be honest, that's been one of the highlights, if not the highlight of my career, the success of that, and going out into the local communities and, you know, making these donations. But again, this trust is the staff's. They're the one that go out and raise the money for it. I'm just the one that has the wonderful job of going out and doing the presenting of the cheques and seeing all these wonderful causes. And, you know, we do take people away from home a lot. You know, we work long hours in our industry. We have an effect on the communities. You know, I was on site in Dartford yesterday. We're doing a Dartford Town Centre regeneration, and the shopkeepers there have had us working outside their shops. So they're not only had to cope with COVID, they've had this construction company coming along digging up outside their shops for a year. You know, well, they've been fantastic. And, you know, we do cause disruption. So to be able to go out and give something back to the communities and help has been absolutely amazing. And, you know, it's something that's very, very dear to my heart, and something that I personally, throughout the rest of my career, are determined to expand and continue onwards.
Amazing. Okay, Steve, finally, if you could leave 1 or 2 lessons to your children, your children's children, about, you know, the role of you in your family business, what lessons would you give them if they were to lead it forward?
Well, I think to some extent we've already said it. You know, cash is king. You've got to manage your money and make sure that you do that. You need good staff, and you need clever people, and you've got to relate to your staff and look after them, you know, and you're going to do that by giving respect. You'll get respect. And I think if you can hold on to those values, you've got the makings for success. Because without your staff, they're your most important asset. You've got no business. You know, whatever business you're in, you need your staff. You can have as many customers as you want, but if you haven't got the right staff to deliver it, you're not gonna succeed. You know, we've all had the bad restaurant experience and the good restaurant experience. It's all about not necessarily the staff themselves, the way they're managed. And you know, I don't think you can learn to be a manager. You've either got that in you to be a manager or you haven't. And if you are a manager, you can manage any business because you can learn the product. So I think, you know, a bit of humility, a bit of respect, and learn. You know, you learn a lot by listening, an awful lot by listening. You know, take it all on board. Don't make rash decisions. You know, think about what you're doing. But most importantly, staff. You've got to look after the staff. But also, it's very eye-opening how different, so many different approaches family have to a family business.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're right.
So many different approaches. You know, I mean, obviously I know, like yourself, and I've got a few people who run family businesses, and I listen. So as I said earlier, I listen to the way they run their businesses, and I think, didn't think of that. Or, oh, blimey, I'm surprised they do that. You know,
yeah.
It's amazing, and you know, there's no right recipe. It's what works for you, really. And I'm quite sure that some people will listen to what I've said today and say, nah, don't agree with that, because we do it this way, and we're not right, we're not wrong. You know, I think there's a huge amount of luck in surviving. You know, you've got to take your chances. You make a certain amount of your own luck, but you need a bit of good fortune as well. You know, and we've had 1 or 2 things come along over the years, opportunities that are presented to us that we've taken that have worked out fantastically for us. And I'm sure there's opportunities that we've let go because we felt a bit cautious and thought that probably would have been great for us. But by the same strength, there's many that we've let go that have turned out to be disastrous, but we're glad we did. You know, it's not easy. It's not easy, but I think I wouldn't swap it. And I think you've got to be the sort of person that can deal with the responsibility. I mean, if I sat and thought too much about the fact that we've got the best part of 1,000 people rely on us for their living, and you know what the bank manager might think because we're on the overdraft limit next week or something, I think I'll go nuts. And you just can't get yourself into that situation. And you know, I am very fortunate. I do go home and switch it off. You know, and I've made myself do that from a very young, early age. And you know, because if you wake up worrying about things in the night, it's always better the next morning anyway. I mean, everything's always worse at night, you know, whatever it is in your life. So yeah, long onwards and upwards.
Brilliant. Thank you, Steve. Congratulations on still being here 56 years later. Thank you so much for sharing your story and a sort of through the keyhole of your family business and your advice, most importantly. And I think as family businesses, you know, our name, like you say, our names are above the door, and it matters to us. There is no plan B. So the more we can learn from each other and share advice and a bit of inspiration and motivation, the better, really. So thank you so much for your time today and for being on the Family Business Show.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure. Anytime.